Hey guys, it's Eddie and I have returned with yet another review for you all, and this is going to be a continuation of my series of reviews involving the movies of the Brat Pack. And so today the movie that we are going to be reviewing is The Outsiders, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Now, the version I have is the collector's edition, the complete novel. So I know there might be a slightly shorter version around somewhere, but this is the version of the movie that I own. It's the version that I watched this morning, so that my reviewing mindset was fresh for you guys, ready for this video, and I just thought I would let you guys know. So there's that. Now, for any of you guys who haven't seen The Outsiders, you haven't read the book, I know that there's a huge fan following of this film on Tumblr in particular, from what I've seen. If you haven't seen it, I will just give you a quick rundown of the plot. So, this movie is adapted from the S.E. Hinton book of the same name, and it centres around a group of boys in the 1960s belonging to the social group of the Greasers. And, you know, across the other side of town there is another group of guys called the Socias, and they kind of like constantly battle it out with each other, and it's kind of like that kind of like gang warfare thing. But this movie focuses particularly on the narrative of one greaser in particular called Ponyboy, played by C. Thomas Howell, and his friend Johnny Cade, played by Ralph Macchio. And the centre of the plot really arises from Johnny and Ponyboy being sort of ambushed by a group of socias one night, and Johnny ends up stabbing a Soc in self-defence, and the two of them have to go into hiding, and they seek refuge in this abandoned church. And one day when they are out with their friend Dallas Winston, played brilliantly by Matt Dillon, they return to the church to find that a group of school kids have been visiting there, and they are currently trapped inside while the building is burning down. And they rescue the children. And so these boys, these greasers that are kind of villainised by society, villainised by the socials, end up becoming sort of local heroes. But sadly there are repercussions, and it doesn't end well for all of them, sadly. But I won't tell you any more than that in case you haven't seen the film. So now that we've got the plot covered, let's get down to reviewing. So this film is directed by Francis Ford Coppola. He's one of my favourite directors, and I think he's always great. He really knows how to evoke sort of this really sensitive side in the movie, this really sort of sad undercurrent which runs through, and you know, his use of the real sort of captivating idyllic shots of particularly the countryside, where Johnny and Ponyboy are hiding, you know, is really beautiful, and it sort of contrasts with their really you know, horrific social struggle in the movie. You know, there are sort of these beautiful wide shots of the sort of church spire against the sunset, and it's really, really beautiful directing. The acting in this film, you know, it's not like breathtaking. I don't think it's particularly Oscar worthy, but we have to remember that this cast was very, very young when they filmed this, especially C. Thomas Howell and Ralph Macchio. I think some of the better performances come from the likes of the supporting cast. I think one of the best performances in the movie comes from Tom Cruise, who plays a minor part. He plays Steve Randall, and he's really sort of funny in a really sort of wacky way. And also he has a really, I think his southern accent is perhaps the best and most well executed in the movie. And also Two Bit Matthews, played by Emilio Estevez, is really, really funny and humorous in a charming sort of adorable boyish manner. But he also conveys this really sensitive side, this really vulnerable side, when he sees that his friends are in trouble. And you know, both of them portray really sort of a versatile array of emotions in the film, and I think they really, really stand out as actors in the movie. But I think the best performance comes from Matt Dillon as Dallas Winston, who is the sort of slightly unhinged, impulsive, but lovable criminal rogue, and he is just the standout performance for me, I think. His character is really, really interesting. He's really sort of gritty, and he's, you know that he's had quite a troubled past, as all of them have. But I think he just plays it really, really well. There's a really raw element to his character, and it makes you feel for him. He's quite endearing in a bad boy kind of way, and he has great chemistry with probably I think the only notable female character in the movie, Cherry, who is played by Diane Lane, and they have this really great love-hate relationship going on. This kind of like young sexual tension thing. It's really, really good. And they were in another film together as well, Rumblefish, also directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So yeah, they have great chemistry, and I love it. This movie puts the spin on things that the Greasers are the sort of underprivileged, hard done by poor kids, and the Socs are the villains, and it kind of gives you this sense of things that these kids, because of where they're born, because of the side of town that they were born on in Tulsa, they're sort of pushed into this life that they don't really want, and they're sort of part of the gang, I don't know, 50% because they want to, and 50% because they're just born into it. And I think one line actually in the film is relating to Darry, who is Ponyboy's older brother, played by Patrick Swayze, and it says, "The only thing keeping Darry from being a Soc is us," referring to the other Greasers. And it kind of indicates that, they aren't as different from each other, these two groups, as they think they are. It's just a manner of, social class and privilege and stuff like that, and these kids are kind of pushed into areas that they don't want to be, and they're sort of villainized, they're painted as criminals, which obviously isn't true, because we get Ponyboy, who is very educated and loves his books, and Darry, who is just a very, very hard-working guy and wants the best for his brothers. So yeah, it's got this whole kind of undercurrent message of sort of social class and peer pressure and gang groups and stuff like that, which I think is always relevant. It's always a relevant topic, and it's really, really good that Francis Ford Coppola managed to translate that from S.E. Hinton's young social novel, and because that is such an important message, and I think it really, really comes through. A notable moment in the film is actually S.E. Hinton's cameo as Dallas's nurse after the church burning down incident. If you guys haven't seen that, or you haven't watched the film, look out for that, because it's quite interesting, because I think she had a hand in the script, as well as writing the book. So there's that. There's a really, really great scene. One of my favourite scenes in the movie to look out for is the rumble scene, which is where the Socs and the Greasers face off together, and it's really sort of messy and raw, and sort of wild in a really, really good way. I think the setting of the sort of torrent of rain and the mud that they're all caked in really adds to the sort of just violent, like, scatter to try and get revenge on either side, because obviously the Socs are angry that Johnny killed one of their members, and the Greasers are angry that, of basically everything that's happened. And it's sort of just a desperate scrap, but the quick cuts and the clever editing of the camera shots, and some shots are really fast, and some shots just show the actors sort of just repeatedly pummeling their sort of opponents. It's it's a really good scene. I think it's a standout scene, and the way that all the angles and all the cuts are spliced together is brilliant. The movie has a really great soundtrack with the really sort of sweet, sensitive title track, Stay Gold, coming from Stevie Wonder, which just shows, you know, the really emotional struggle of these guys, these boys. Yeah, it's really, it really suits the sort of undercurrents of the movie, and it also Carmine Coppola, the music producer, also involves some really, really great quintessential 60s tracks that really transport you back to that time. And yeah, I think it just adds great authenticity to the movie. I love the soundtrack. I think it works really, really well. Overall, I think this film is just a great I think it's a great movie. I mean, it was hailed as the first Brat Pack movie because it's the first time I think that we've seen such a young cast and these particular cast members working together in such a large group. It was the first one of its kind, and then that sort of continued on with other movies such as, you know, 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, blah, 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 even though they kind of took on a different tone. So I would definitely recommend this film to everyone, especially people who are fans of the Brat Pack. I mean, you know, people who are fans of like Emilio Estevez and Rob Lowe and Matt Dillon, you know, those really, you know, typical characters of, you know, the 80s pop culture scene. And I know it's considered a Brat Pack movie, but it is slightly different in a way because it's, well, it's not a period drama, but it takes a sort of more historical standpoint than the other Brat Pack movies. It's got a different tone because it's set 20 years before the time it was filmed. So yeah, I mean, it's not like St. Elmo's Fire. There's still that kind of young teenage angst thing going on, but I think it's got more of a sort of historically, or, you know, past events orientated storyline. And I think, but I would still definitely recommend it to anyone who loves the Brat Pack. Because it is a great film. It has a fantastic plot that is really, really well executed by the director and adapted brilliantly from the book. The cast, I think, do it justice. I know I said that the acting wasn't the best in the world, but that doesn't mean that it isn't still good. It's still really, really good. And it's just the matter of it being a really young cast. But I think the characters they portray, they're all suited fantastically for, and they, as much as the director helped to execute the plot in this really, I think, important, game-changing young novel. I think this movie is game-changing because, as I said, it was the first Brat Pack movie. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. I would also recommend the book because when I was reading the book, I realised how close it was to the movie, and yeah, that, I guess that gives even more credit to Francis Ford Coppola for, you know, doing such a really close adaptation to S.E. Hinton's vision. And yeah, that is my take on The Outsiders. Now, remember, you guys, if you have any suggestions of movies for me to review, just leave a comment down below or message me on my Tumblr, the link of which I will leave in the description, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!